What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 34 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what an absolutely unbelievable weekend we had last weekend at Saratoga. A lot of ups and unfortunately some downs, which we will touch on a little bit in this show, but mostly in tomorrow's show that is taking place of Bettin and Boozin on Wednesdays, as I am actually going on back-to-back vacation, got family vacation that my parents and brother and everyone have already been on since last Saturday. So I got to go join up with them tomorrow. So Bettin and Boozin on a special day here on Tuesday, but it doesn't stop. And tomorrow, Howard, Pete, Paul, myself, I might be joining. It depends on what time I get there. But recapping all of the events that happened this past weekend at Saratoga, including a lot of highs and then, like I said, unfortunately, some lows as well. But guys, thanks so much for everyone joining in. It's going to be a great show this weekend as we touch on the late pick five again at Saratoga on Friday. So everyone, thanks again so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciated. Like I stated before, tomorrow there will be a show at 8 p.m. Eastern talking all about the last weekend at Saratoga, all the stories, all the big bets, all the win bets, all the lost bets, and like I said, unfortunately, everything that happened with the track, we will be talking about tomorrow. Again, that's at 8 p.m. Eastern. And on Thursday, the flagship show goes on as normal, 8 p.m. Eastern as well, talking about the late pick five at Colonial Downs on Saturday, capping the I don't want to say it, Arlington Million Day at Colonial Downs on Saturday. So guys, it's going to be a great weekend, a great week of shows for the podcast. So please, if you're new here, find yourself coming back and you aren't subscribed, you should. You're already coming back anyway. Please go below the video player, hit the big red subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it as it really helps out the channel. And while you're there, hit the like button. That'll send out this podcast to many other viewers of YouTube and hopefully continue to grow this podcast as it has done so greatly in the past few months. So that we can only thank you guys for. Greatly appreciate it. If, like I said, smash that like button, smash that notification bell, as well as all these shows keep popping up, and some change dates, unfortunately, due to prior commitments. You'll never miss out a show. So do that as well. If you're more of an audio listener, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where we post not only every episode of Bettin and Boozin, but every single episode that goes up on the HHH Racing Podcast channel. Again, those are our three main audio platforms. If you're more of an audio listener on your way to work or while you're at the gym or anything like that, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Guys, for the normal power picks, they have been lights out again. 3 more winners this week. If you aren't subscribed yet, you're really missing out. $15.99 billed monthly. It comes out to only $4 a week, and you get full grids, price plays for the weekend. At 2 tracks for only $4 a weekend with a over 2.34 ROI. All the way back to when we started this 2.5 years ago, we have a very positive ROI. If you, like I said, if you aren't subscribed, you're missing out. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And our Saratoga only power picks are live until Thursday morning. Go to hhhracingpodcast.com to get signed up for those. At the top, you'll see a tab called Power Picks Tip Sheet, and you'll click on that and you'll see the subscribers. If you're already a subscriber to the normal power picks, you get a discount as well. It is $19.99 for the weekend for non-power pick subscribers, and for current ones, it is only $14.99. So I would highly suggest getting on that. You'll get Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays card, all grids, all spot plays, everything you need. hhhracingpodcast.com. But guys, we're going to get into it pretty quickly here. I'm going to bring up my co-host for the night, as Patrick has prior commitments, even though, again, the guy that went to Saratoga is not going to be on with me. But of course, I have my 2 other great co-hosts to help me dive deep into this late pick 5 at Saratoga. From Chicago, Illinois, Charlie Freeman, and from the West Coast of California, Noah Maher. Boys, what's going on?
What's going on, fellas?
Not much. How you guys doing?
And Noah, in case you were wondering, our 1 to 9 of Charlie being in bed for this podcast has hit. So your bridge jumping play does work out in the end. We were just joking around before.
I'm already up for the weekend. I don't even need to play this card.
Exactly. I mean, what's the point if you take your winnings and run? But Going through the chat real quick, guys, and we'll get started. Trish Smith, again, can't wait to hear all about Saratoga. I know I just responded to you, but I'll bring you up here. Like I said, with tonight and tomorrow, we'll talk all about it. So there will be plenty of information to go around. Richard Avalar's here. It's going great, Richard. Thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Tony Osmond, I don't think I've seen your name before on Bettin and Boozin. Thanks so much, Tony, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Richard, we were going to do a podcast on Whitney Day. Unfortunately, where we were, which is outside, we were literally right on the first turn. The Wi-Fi was a little rough out there, so we couldn't get a stable connection. So unfortunately, that negated our plans to do a podcast live from Saratoga. But like I said, you'll get all the stories and all the great betting stories tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, sorry to everyone out there for not being able to do that podcast on Saturday. Jim Pilares, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Racing Down Wins in the house. Greatly appreciate it. But Charles B is here. Thanks so much for joining the show. Rob N is here. Thanks so much. And everyone else, guys, just greatly appreciate everyone joining the show. As we do have a big audience already. Jeez, my ADD is destroying me right now for some reason, but we'll hopefully try and dumb it down as we get into the races. But I want to give a big shout out to all the Saratoga guys, Howard, Matt, Drew, Nancy, Philly Joe, Travis Stone, and everyone else. Brad Anderson, can't forget Brad, and everyone else that we saw. Nick Feldman, we saw. Derek Poya, give a big shout out to you guys. Thanks so much for meeting up with us and all that. Thanks so much. And for all the boys, they know the big wave. I had to bring out the big wave, as that's basically all we drank in the gazebo this weekend. So cheers to everyone out there as we get into this late pick 5 at Saratoga. Guys, it's a very good sequence. It starts with a 2-year-old New York sprint on the dirt, and then we go into a little bit of deja vu as the Hall of Fame after it was canceled last Friday. After they got a lot of rain, and thank God they got in the Saratoga Oaks before that, because that ended up being my best pick of the entire weekend. Ended up running and winning going away 7-2 morning line all the way down to 6-5 naturally. But it's just it's a great card. We have three listed stakes. You have the Union Ave earlier in the sequence that we won't be talking about. I can go over it briefly, but then 2 really hard claiming races at the end. This is a really tough sequence, and it really opens up many different avenues that you can go this weekend. But guys, without further ado, we're going to get into it. It is the late pick 5 starts in race number 7. Like I said, it's maiden special weight, going 6 furlongs on the dirt for New York breds. It draws a full field of 10 with 6 also eligibles on the list. As I go and bring it up right now, you'll see this massive list of horses that draw into this race. Again, it's 10 horses and then 6 also eligibles. The morning line favorite will most likely be the number 10 on the outside, Vetriano, I believe is how you say that, for Pratt and Chad. And obviously you won't see Irad, as he was injured last weekend on Sunday in a turf race, and will be off his mounts, I believe, for this weekend, if not more. So you'll see a lot of Pratt riding for Chad and a lot of shakeup otherwise. But bringing up the picks right now, guys, for race number 7, 2 of us are going with the number 10, Vetriano, on the outside. Noah is the odd man out, although Charlie and I both have the horse in second. The number 6, Trust Fund for Saez and Pletcher. And as I bring it up right now, Noah, what did you like most about Trust Fund?
Yeah, with Trust Fund, this colt seems like he could be a really nice colt for Eclipse Thoroughbreds and Mike Rapoli. Out of Practical Joke, out of an Uncle Mo mare. Based off the breeding, I think 6 furlongs is probably going to be pretty ideal for this horse to win at first asking. And then with the works, the 2 gate drills at the end kind of stood out to me the most. And then obviously Saez, he's going to be aggressive out of the gate. So I feel like if this horse has any speed at all, Saez is going to help that.
Yeah, which is another thing what I noticed. Charlie, we'll go to you, and I'll let you talk about the 10 as well. Trust Fund, the last 2 breezing out of the gate were both in 48 flat. Pletcher really has this horse ready to go. Practical Jokes are great sprinting. 2-year-olds, a 2-year-old first time starter. Practical Joke was 19%. I mean, that's amazing for a sire, especially with the amount of progeny he has. So trust fund is definitely interesting. Charlie, is that where you kind of went, or did you kind of go other ways with but still like trust fund?
No, I still think trust fund will be very dangerous. Obviously, anytime you see a Todd Pletcher trained horse for a first-time starter, one you have to be paying close attention to. As Noah mentioned, something that stood out to me was the workouts, just working very forwardly without having to work too hard, but putting up very impressive numbers nonetheless. And then again, just as you touched on, Louis Size, one of the best in the business, very good at being aggressive and kind of wherever the trainer wants this horse to be, he's very good at executing that. If he needs to pull back, he will, but anytime he needs to descend, he'll be able to do so. He's one of the most aggressive while still being fair and talented jockeys there is. And as much as I do think the horse is in with the shot, I personally think the outside horse is just going to be pretty much unbeatable in this field. I understand that these are first-time starters, but obviously this very expensive horse, Chad Brown, has this horse. And Chad Brown, is not someone who's necessarily known for like my guy Wesley Ward. He's not necessarily known for someone who tends to work up his horses where they have to have crazy times. He kind of just works them breezing. So to see this horse having 2 straight workouts of 47-3, 47-4, before that of 48-2. This horse is just working very forwardly. Flavian Pratt, another one who's one of the best in the business, another one similar to Louis Size at great execution of putting where the horse needs to be. And I just think that Triano, and I think that's how you say it, is just going to be very tough to beat in this spot.
Yeah, and obviously the best thing about having these races first in the Pick 5 is watch the board, watch where the money goes, people, because that is what's going to be the telltale sign, i.e. the Chad Brown that ran, I believe, on Sunday, and just Ways and Means, I believe is the name of the horse, just absolutely blew the doors off that field, and they were betting him down from a morning line of, I think, 3-1, and just betting him all the way down to 6-5 and winning by 10. That's definitely a horse to put in your stable and keep in mind, but this is definitely going to be a board watcher for me, because the only thing that concerns me about Vetriano, I mean, 47-3 breezing from the gate is a absolute massive workout. But the only thing is Liam's map is not too good with his 2-year-old first-time starters. He's only 6% off of the first-time starters at 2. So that's going to be one thing to look out for. But this horse was working amazing. Chad Brown hasn't pointed to this spot, and definitely, I mean, the horse sold for $350,000. This horse is definitely well meant for Chad and Carol Radcliffe. So Vetriano is my top pick as well, and we are going with completely different horses in the 3rd spot. And one comment I wanted to bring up real quick is from the boss, Howard. He says he could be wrong, but a few jocks are suspended from Wednesday to Friday, which would include Irad, which would make sense why he is off his mounts for Friday. I believe that I thought it was for the injury, but that definitely makes more sense. Thanks so much, Howard, again for commenting that. I appreciate it. So the Charlie, I'll let you finish up here. Kanij Stallone or something. These horse names just get more ridiculous. But for Englehart and Rosario, you have this horse in 3rd.
Yeah, I was really just, to me, and it seems like we're all kind of in agreement that, at least on paper, it looks like the 6 and the 10 are the main 2 threats. So I was just kind of looking for something else to just kind of stick out to me as a horse that's been working well, that I would have a chance. And I'm just going to call this horse, kind of referencing another horse I love, like Mr. C. We're just going to call this one Mr. C for now. But, this horse has worked very well. Again, 36-4, 47-3, gets Joel Rosario, who, again, I know we like to make jokes, but still in his own right is still a very solid jockey in New York. And so, yeah, I just thought, again, you're just kind of looking for some other horse to be put under. I feel like this one you can get more of a reasonable price. So I certainly think this is one that could, at least from the works, hit the board.
Yeah, I mean, the horse is definitely working. Englehart has this horse well meant for this race. So the only thing, Leo Frick is 0 for 5 with his total progeny so far. You can go up here. 4 2-year-old first-time starters in the first crop, and none of them have necessarily done any running. So that's, I guess, one thing to be concerned about. But this horse is working great at Saratoga, even out of the gate as well. So Kanij Stallone is definitely one to keep in mind. Noah, you have the number 4 just underneath is Perliano for Atris and Lascano in 3rd.
Yeah, Perliano was one of 2 horses with experience. He started on turf, but I'm not really convinced that that's necessarily his gig. He did a nice job finishing behind 2 solid horses, and the 2nd place finisher came back to win. But I think he's kind of up against it with these Pletcher and Brown first timers.
Yeah, the only thing that, I mean, this horse was put on the turf at Belmont, and now I'm assuming since he's working well in the dirt, that's just going to try him over. It just kind of seems like, oh, well, the turf didn't work out. Let's move him to the dirt type of thing for me. Going a little bit longer should help this horse a little bit, but wasn't bet first time out. Rosario chooses off to the 4 or to the 3, excuse me. So I had a lot of question marks with Perliano, but the experience definitely always helps in a field like this. I went with the number 8, Catalina Crush, for Norm Cassie and Ricardo Santana. This horse has been working decent, but Kai Bosch realistically was a great horse in her own right. Has at 3 starts at 2 years old for her progeny, and are 2 for 3 in the money. And Catalina Cruiser is 2 for 13 for 2-year-old first-time starters, but a 5 for 13 in the money. So just playing kind of the odds games here with the pedigree. Horse is working well enough for Norm Cassie. Sorry, I pointed at the wrong horse there, but the horse is working well enough for Norm Cassie. Ships up to Saratoga, has a work over the dirt. So I think Catalina Cruiser could be really interesting, especially underneath. But they're like I said earlier, watch the board in these types of races, especially since it's the start of the first race. It's the start of the late pick 5. So we have the ability to watch the board and go where the money goes. I'm going 10-6-8. Charlie's going 10-6-3, and Noah's going 6-10-4. Guys, we're going to switch over to race number 8 as the second leg of the late pick 5. And for those of you that watched Bettin and Boozin last weekend, it's a little bit of deja vu for everybody out there, because this is the Grade 2 Hall of Fame Stakes. This was canceled last Friday due to lightning and rain concerns with that turf course. And again, we're handicapping these. I know they're off the turf on Wednesday and most likely Thursday as well. We're handicapping these races for the turf. If they get pulled off, please follow all of us on Twitter as we post our updated picks on Twitter for anything, any surface changes, any jockey, anything like that, any changes will be posted on Twitter. So please follow us. They are all in our name tags. Noah's is just under his name tag. But the Grade 2 Hall of Fame Stakes, going a mile on the inner turf course for $500,000, a field of 9. The only horse we are missing from last weekend is Nagarok, who scratched from this race anyway last weekend, and then actually scratched from a race on Saturday. So Nagarok won't be running at Saratoga most likely anymore this summer. But the field of 9, this is a big thing to talk about, because this race got all the way down to post time, to the scheduled post time, and then they canceled it for rain. But More Than Looks was the favorite going into the race. He was down to 2-1. Carl Spackler was down to 4 at 4/9-2, somewhere in that range. The Euro Ocean Vision for Tim Donworth was down to 8-1. And then all the other ones were anywhere from that 9 to 20-1 range. So More Than Looks will most likely be the morning line favorite, as we saw all the action that this horse took last weekend. But Carl Spackler is not going to be too far behind in the betting. As I bring up our picks, you'll see 2 of us are going with the number 2, Carl Spackler, for Gaffalione and Brown. Charlie is going the other way with the presumed post-time favorite in More Than Looks with John Velasquez and Cherie DeVoe. Charlie, I'll let you go first. We won't spend too much time on this race, as we basically are handicapping the same race 2 weeks in a row. But please talk about what you saw in More Than Looks.
Yeah, so I know I wasn't on last week's episode, so now I get my sort of redemption to cover.
That is true. That is true.
So yeah, for More Than Looks, kind of what you guys had touched on last week. I know the trip was ideal as a closer with a hot pace, but I still thought this horse just looked tremendous. I watched the replay. It was just still a great effort. Didn't get off too well, and was still able to make the great recovery. Gets John Velasquez again. Again, yeah, as you mentioned, the horse was taking the money as it deserved to, and will likely go off as the favorite or near the favorite, Carl Spackler. And I do believe these are the 2 best horses. I think Carl Spackler could take more money than last time, simply because of the gate change being beneficial, in my opinion. But to me, these were the 2 that stood out very well. I know all of us were very high on Carl Spackler last time out, but and ended up going off as the favorite, which I don't think we initially had anticipated with horses like Farbridge and Major Dude, but just did not get a good trip at all. I still believe in Carl Spackler from when we were all over this horse at Gulfstream when we covered Carl Spackler on the show, and he ended up dominating by, what was it, like 7-8 lengths. I swear the horse was like off the screen.
Yep.
So I do think Carl Spackler will still be very tough, but I just think if More Than Looks gets the right trip, should win this race, but I think it's going to be interesting because Carl Spackler will be right towards the front, and More Than Looks will be sitting way.
And his internet's dead. Unlucky. But either way, I wanted to point out as well, Charlie was not on the show last weekend, but as Howard points out, he gave out a very good pick on the Saratoga Power Picks last week with a win bet and an exacta that paid 180 for $3, which is what he had, and then $68 to win. So on a $20 win bet. So congrats to anyone that cashed on that. But Howard also says when we were in the paddock there, Charlie's back. That's awesome. But he said More Than Looks was exactly that in the paddock. He looked the best, was ready to run in the paddock. And Howard also likes Behind Enemy Lines is the price play in this race, who is about 8-1 towards the post time. Noah, I can let you talk about Carlos Spackler and anything you saw in More Than Looks as well. He looked great, but he's definitely going to have to replicate that. He's most likely going to have to replicate that last race if he wants any piece of this.
Yeah, Charlie touched on a lot about Carl Spackler. Was a favorite against tough field in the American turf. He has been working like a monster on that Saratoga turf. And like Charlie was saying, I just feel like you have to expect something similar to those races down in South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, the American turf was an extremely tough race. I mean, we covered over it last week. Webslinger, Major Dude, Far Bridge, Mustache, Behind Enemy Lines, and Webslinger and Farbridge came back to run really nice races in the Saratoga Derby last weekend. Webslinger just missing to Howard's play program trading in that race, who ran a massive race, third time asking. So Farbridge, I think, just didn't like the yielding turf course that day. At least that's the way it looked to me. He's still realistically a monster and definitely will be bet next time out as well. But More Than Looks definitely has the opportunity to continue to improve off that last race. He did get a good setup that last one, but I don't necessarily think he needs a hot pace to be able to close. I just think Carl Spackler is going to be tactical, and especially more now that he draws way more inside than what he was last weekend, as he was the 10 post last weekend. But I just think that American Turf was an extremely tough race. If he can run anywhere near back to those races in Florida, maybe even improve off of them, I think he could be really tough in the spot, especially the way that he's been working. And he worked a drill 2 days ago on Sunday after they canceled the race, and he worked in 49-2 over the Oklahoma turf course. So this horse is still in lightning form and definitely could be tough come Sunday. But Charlie, you and I have the same horse in third. It's the Chad Brown second time starter. Manny Franco picks up the mount now. Since Irad is out for Friday, just has a massive room to improve, like we talked about last week.
Yeah, and this was a horse where I didn't end up seeing where the betting finished, but when I'd initially looked, because before obviously the races got canceled and scratched off, I was looking to play this horse potentially under More Than Looks and Carl Spackler, and I'd seen this horse initially. It was like 10-12-1 and got bet down to 5-1 at least earlier on, so it looked like the horse was taking some money. Not too surprised, obviously, with it being a Chad Brown horse that's worked decently, and again, second time out, has every right to step forward. Ran a very solid race off of on debut, sitting pretty far off the pace, and then was able to close in and get the job done. I think this horse would need to sit more of a stalking trip to truly have a chance to win, but still should be in the money. The only concern I have, but again, I think I like this horse underneath as a price, is I feel like if the horse wants to go more towards the front, there's other horses that are faster. And if the horse wants to sit back, I don't think anybody's going to be able to close like More Than Looks. But I feel like if this horse can sit the right stalking trip, can certainly finish in the money at a solid price.
Yeah, I mean, granted, this is a big ask for a horse like this, although he ran a massive race last time at Belmont, stretching out for the first time, 2 turns for the first time. Many question marks for this horse, but with the amount of upside this horse most likely has, sold for $600,000 in 2021. This horse is extremely well meant for Peter Brandt and definitely could show a lot of improvement off that massive maiden race. No, I'll let you go last here. You have the number 5 Appraise, the other Chad in this spot, although Flavian picks up the mountain now. If he improves out that allowance race, he's definitely there as well.
Yeah, in my third spot in last week's show, I originally had Nagarok, and Nagarok's not in the race anymore. So I figured I'd go with the price. I didn't quite get to see what his odds were when they ended up canceling those last 4 races. But like you said, ran a nice 86 off that long layoff. Chad thought pretty well of this horse last summer. And like you said, with program trading, these I'm pretty sure these are the exact connections that threw program trading into the grade 1 after an allowance optional claiming. And we saw that they were successful that time. So at a price, I don't really see why this horse can't improve.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can. And there's a lot of talk about the weather in chat, how it's most likely not going to be good for Friday. If that is the case, like I said, you'll see all our picks on Twitter. But this race will most likely stay on the turf, although after everything that's been happening, I'm not sure that will be the case. But this is definitely one to keep in mind the day of and see where the weather is. But like I said, this is exactly the same, almost exactly the same race as it was last week. Keep an eye on who's going to be bet. More Than Looks was the favorite, followed by Carl Spackler and a few others. But that I think that's definitely a big thing to keep in mind is how they were bet last week, and it most likely will mirror exactly how they're bet this week. And considering Nagarok was scratched anyway early from last week's race, I'm going 2-1-7. Charlie's going 1-2-7, and Noah's going 2-1-5. Guys, switching over the PPs right now, as race number 9 is why is it not showing up? The Evan Shipman handicap going for New York breds, going 1 mile on the dirt. It is a field of 8 in this spot, with the most likely morning line favorite is the returning American Revolution for Luis Saez and Todd Pletcher. And guys, we're going to play the game that everyone loves. We haven't played the game in a little while. I want to see how many people you think, how many people on this panel you think went with American Revolution in this spot. Is it 1, 2, or 3? Again, I will give you that one person did go with American Revolution, but how many do you think went with American Revolution in this spot? I'll give the chat a few seconds to rattle off some numbers here, and then we'll get into it. Howard says 2, Jim says 2, Richard says 1, and we're going to continue to flow in here, but I will let you guys know, like I said, at least 1 has it, but 2 people went with American Revolution in this spot. Both Charlie and Noah going with the returning 5-year-old. I went a different way. I went with Bankett's number 5 for Rosario, the old grandpa, the 7-year-old for Rosario and Asmussen. But I'll let you guys go first. Charlie, you went first last time, I believe. So Noah, I'll let you go first. What did you like most about American Revolution?
Well, this horse has been competing with Olympiad and Proxy. So simply put, he was running with some of the best horses in the country last year. Even though the mile might be a little too short for him, he did run a 105 and win the Cigar Mile. I'll let Charlie touch on it. In my opinion, it was pretty impossible to really knock this horse.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get a good price, which is one thing that concerned me with American Revolution, especially off the type of layoff that he's on. But, I mean, just the class, the horses he's running against, Charlie, I mean, he's going to have to run basically, a B-plus effort off the layoff to be pretty good in this field.
Yeah, I mean, the figures, the consistency that you can clearly see, this horse is just, in my eyes, levels above everyone else. And it's not that the other horses are bad by any means. I mean, you still see solid figures in races. But just like Noah touched on, I mean, this horse has been running against the best of the best. From the workouts perspective, it doesn't look like the horse is having any sort of issues about getting in shape or being in form from where the horse left off. I just think American Revolution towers over this field. Luis Saez will have this horse going well for Todd Pletcher. And again, can really put this horse anywhere. And we always talk about versatility. I just love that this horse has so much early and late speed that I don't think the distance will really be a problem. I think this horse is naturally, without even having to work hard, fast enough that American Revolution will be able to sit right on the lead or just off, and has enough kick late on to go right by these horses. The distance, as again, Noah touchdown, doesn't worry me, because the one time this horse ran a mile, looked all the goods, ran a 105, which is more than good enough to win this field. And again, for me, this is one of those races where I'm looking for other horses to find to put underneath rather than trying to figure out who to win, because I think it's clearly American Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that concern with American Revolution, and I understand all the good things about him. He will most likely be even money or under. Well, he will be even money or under. The last time he came off a layoff like this, he did regress to a 94. Granted, it was against Dynamic One, Proxy, and Scalding. I understand the type of horses he was facing might not be what he's facing in here. I don't like the rail necessarily for a horse like American Revolution. I think he could get stopped somewhere in like 5th position, somewhere like that off the layoff. The works are great. Pletcher has him in form, but at 4 to 5 off of a 10-month, almost actually 11-month layoff, I'd be willing to look somewhere else, and that's where I landed. I landed on Bankit for Winchell, Rosario, and Asmussen. Ran a great race in the Commentator at Belmont above Olympic Dreams, and Sheriff Bianco is also in this spot. I like the post better. And if he can run anywhere near that mid 90s, what American Revolution showed that he regressed to before, I think he could be definitely competitive. I know Howard's going to say the fact of, he's 7 years old. He can't keep up. He's ran 280s. I understand that. I'm just trying to find value in a race where there's going to be a big favorite coming off a long layoff with some question marks. The figures definitely fit and definitely are way above everyone else for American Revolution, but I'm willing to take a risk and go with the number 5, Bankit, who looks to sit a really nice stalking trip to American Revolution's outside. And if he keeps American Revolution boxed in just that long, gets a little bit of the first jump, I think Bankit has a very strong chance in this race as long as he can keep up that mid-90s figure. I know you both have Bankit in second, but I'll let you touch on your third place horses, who Charlie and I have the same horse in third, that being Sheriff Bianco for Rice and Liscano, and then anything you want to touch on with Bankit, and then we'll move on. Charlie.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I lagged for a second. So, as you touched on with Bankit, looks very talented still. The figures, taking that step forward back to a 94 after, not that an 86 is bad, but certainly for a field like this, not going to cut it. So nice to see the horse bounce back. And yeah, kind of like what you touched on, I think the horse has nice amount of early speed where Bankit can kind of sit a similar trip to American Revolution and still, be within striking distance and still shows that strong enough late kick. And then with the 7 that we both touched on with, I think is that Sheriff Bianco.
Yep.
Another one, again, with probably the most early speed out of the 3 horses. So definitely the one that will have the first crack at it. Maybe he'll be on the lead or just off. I know Linda Rice has gone kind of cold, but was hot and still can bounce back. And Liscano, he'd been running really well. I saw, at least the days that I was at Saratoga, I saw him win 2 races and 3 races. So he's been in his best form to date, which is nice to see, obviously, as well. And so, yeah, those were the only other ones that I really thought could, hang around there. I think is, again, going to be one of those where we've kind of covered before races where the heavy favorite, overwhelming one that's supposed to win, if they don't get that right trip, can still lose. So that is something to be wary of. But I think it'll be interesting because I think these are ones that will probably sit similar trips to American Revolution, and it's just going to come down to, does American Revolution get that clean enough trip to go by all of them and win?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. I just like that Bankit's going to be a little more outside of American Revolution, who drew the rail. And if he's on his outside, on his flank, and if he starts to go, American Revolution's gonna have to wait. Maybe he could just easily be better, which shows based on the form. But if he has to wait a little bit and isn't completely ready off the layoff, that was kind of my angle to grab a little bit of value in this race. Shout out to Tanner Hawkins, who's in the chat. I haven't seen you in a while, man. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Noah, you have the last say here. Like I said, you could touch on anyone that was talked about. Dr. Ardito for Chad Brown, Manny Franco. I mean, this horse was great last year and at the beginning of this year. Won 7 in a row in both allowance, optional claiming, and listed stake company. Hasn't run his race in the past 2, although still in the low 90s for figures.
Yeah, Dr. Ardito is obviously a really talented horse. I mean, he won 7 in a row at one point. But I want to touch on Bankit because I put him ahead of Dr. Ardito, and you'll see that in my best bets later. My thinking with Dr. Ardito is he's talented. I kind of hope he'll be the second choice, so I get a little bit of value. But I think Dr. Ardito is just one of those horses that just really likes Aqueduct. Like, he just really likes that one surface, that one track. It definitely could be, as we like to say, stinking thinking, but I'm just trying to find a little bit of value in this race where there's a pretty logical favorite.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, Dr. Ardito was very good last year. Just never really seemed to go above that mid 95, mid 90s, 96, 95 buyer, kind of plateaued off and just hasn't had enough these past two starts. Hopefully getting back to New York company, he has a little bit bigger of a run and shows a little bit more tactical speed, which is where I think he's best. But I was looking other places to kind of get a little bit more value, as you know, that these Chads, especially with all the ones on the page, will take a little bit of money. One thing to go on, and then we'll move on from this race. Howard points out this is a very simple race from a ticket construction standpoint. It's either you single American Revolution or you toss and spread with everybody, with not necessarily with everybody else, but spread throughout the field. So, because if he's going to be 4 to 5 off of layoff, you either love him or you have a lot of question marks like I do. So you'll either single him or toss him and spread. And it's just, like I said, it's just kind of, you can go many different ways in this spot with American Revolution, but really it comes down to one or two different outcomes. But Howard also says that the outer posts coming out of the chute have not been the place to be. We were right there. If you saw any of those videos that I posted on Twitter, we were literally able to stand on the rail of the Wilson chute, and they were, I mean, probably 7 steps from us was the starting gate. It was absolutely unbelievable. The facilities at Saratoga are just, yeah, like I said, unbelievable. Like, you're kind of at a loss for words for something like that. It's a different experience to anything else I've ever experienced, but I'm not sure about other tracks because I know I've only been to I think that was my 7th track I've been to. So I'm getting up there now, but got to get a few more in there as well. Got to get a few more travels, but we're moving on to race number 10 here. It's an optional, it's a claiming race, 35,000 non-winners of 2 lifetime, going 5.5 on the turf as I switch over the Equibase right now. It shows a full field of 10 with 2 also eligibles. The morning line favorite most likely will be probably Saratoga Gaze on the outside for Pratt, and Mark Hennig would be my guess. And I switch over to our picks right now. I am going with the number 10 out on the outside horse for Hennig. And both Charlie and Noah are going with the number 5. Michelle M for Rosario and Christophe Clement. Charlie, your time to go first, my friend. As I switch over the PPs, what'd you like most about Michelle M?
Yeah, so my angle with Michelle M, honestly, is just when this horse was running more of the shorter, I mean, I guess the horse doesn't have a lot of racing, but when this horse ran the one shorter race on turf, ran not that it's some crazy figure, but for this field, ran a 75, which is very respectable. And honestly, running back to that effort would be strong enough for this horse to win, in my opinion. The horse has been working very sharply with a 35-4 and a 48-2, so certainly looks to be in shape and ready to go to bounce back. I think they just tried something different with the horse again. Second race off the layoff, decided to try to extend the horse to a mile and a 16th on the turf. The horse just did not like it. Faded. The distance was just not meant to be. I think Christophe Clement is a very underrated trainer, and I think he has Michelle M ready to go. Again, I like the cutback. I know Noah also has Michelle M on top, so I'm curious if he had the same kind of thought. But so yeah, that was my sort of angle. Getting this horse back to a more reasonable distance. Has a good mix of early and late speed where this horse can kind of sit that stalking trip that I prefer a horse to sit. If this horse runs back towards that 75 figure, I think that's good enough to win this race.
I mean, I agree. Noah, you also have this horse on top. Do you want to piggyback anything that Charlie just said?
Yeah, I had similar thinking with Michelle M. In that race 2 back, it was a pretty tough field. Both the 2nd and 3rd place finishers came back to win. That was also her first start in 6 months, so give her a little bit of credit there. And like Charlie said, I think you can kind of scratch that last race. I don't think she really wants any part of 2 turns. And she's shown her late kick before, and I think she'll get a pretty honest pace in this race.
Yeah, there's just one thing. I mean, the late kick that was shown was on synthetic at Presque Isle. Went to Woodbine, really didn't know running at all. In the last 2, one at Belmont, one at Delaware, both really not much running at all. This race is at 5.5, putting her back sprinting. But I passed her. For Michelle M, granted, that best figure was sprinting at 6 furlongs, goes to the soft at Delaware, runs a dud, now comes back with blinkers on. It almost seems like Christoph's trying to find something to get this filly good to go. And I think the blinkers could be what's needed. And anywhere near that 75, I would agree with you, Charlie, should be good enough in this field, as there's a lot of different horses that don't necessarily have high enough figures to get up there. I went with the number 10 in this race, Saratoga Gaze for Mark Hennig, Flavian Pratt. Those last two starts were good enough for me to key on, especially the last start at Saratoga earlier in the meet, where it ran behind Linerite, who's actually my second choice. But this horse has speed from the outside, has plenty of opportunity to be tactical, does her best running on the lead, but if she's able to just sit just off, she also does very good running there. I think she has a big chance if she can clear from the outside, although the post is definitely not kind in this type of spot. I'm sure that's what everyone else saw. But Charlie, I'll let you touch on Linerite, as you have her in second as well. And then you can touch on anything I didn't touch on with Saratoga Gaze.
Yeah, so Linerite ran a very close and competitive effort with Saratoga Gaze. Was way off the pace and was able to close in very nicely. That was kind of my angle. Was I feel like there is, as Noah kind of touched on earlier, that there will be an honest pace in this race. There's enough early speed that I do think Linerite can close in there. My only worry is I just don't know, because of the lack of early speed, if the horse can get there in time. That's kind of what my angle was with putting the 5 on top ultimately, and then going with the 10, who's more of like a speed or pressing horse. So kind of going with a different horse of each type. And for me, I think in these races, stalkers are the easiest to trust, because again, with a speed horse, you got to hope they don't run out of gas in a closer. When it's this short, you got to hope there's enough time. But I still think Linerite you should get decent value on. Nothing crazy based off of the fact that it ran close against who you mentioned, who I agree will probably be the opening favorite of Saratoga Gaze. But I think this horse can certainly be in and around there and can win for sure with a step forward. Just comes down to, can the horse be close enough to win? And then my only worry with Saratoga Gaze, honestly, and why I put the horse third, is I just feel like the horse got the perfect trip last time out, was able to get to the lead where the horse wants to be, and then didn't fade badly by any means, only lost by a length and a half, but still just didn't get the job done. The outside post worries me as well. And it just kind of makes me feel like the figures certainly match, but if the horse is getting the kind of race and even has gotten some cold paces and couldn't get the job done, I just feel like this might be one of those horses that loves to get to where it wants to be and then finish in the money but doesn't win. So ultimately, I just look for 2 more values that I think could get the job done.
Which is completely fair. I just think this horse is much better at the claiming level. And another start where she led by 2.5 last time out and was just end up being caught. I think maybe Flavian Pratt's learning on where she likes to push the button. And if she can get in a good trip from that outside gate, I think she has enough punch to be able to improve a little bit and get the win, as you're not needing a much improvement to beat this type of field. But Noah, you have the number 1 in third, which is the last horse we'll talk about, Magniloquent for Ward. And Ward, who surprisingly, the man below me does not have this horse anywhere, which might be the biggest.
Wow.
I know, which might be the biggest surprise of Bettin and Boozin ever, in my opinion. But Noah, what'd you like about Magniloquent?
I kind of threw this horse in just to kind of talk some people off of her. Obviously, you have to respect Wesley Ward and Tyler Gaffleone and any horse that they run on turf. But to me, there are several concerns. She's been speed and fade in the last 4 starts, some of them at pretty short odds. Just to go the extra half furlong. There's other speed in the race, like you guys mentioned. Going down the line, the 2's got a 97 early time form. The 6 just ran a 21-3, going 6 furlongs. The 7's got a 101 early time form, and then I think the 10's going to be pretty right up there too. So maybe she can wire this field, but there's just so many questions that she's hard to bet.
Yeah, and the big questions for me come on the grass. This horse she's really run nothing of substantiality at all. Those 2 at Gulfstream main optional claimings were decent, but last year at Saratoga, she ran an absolute dud in the same exact race, same exact conditions. Goes to Gulfstream and Woodbine and Sapita, runs actually really decent races, now comes back to the turf where she really hasn't done her best running. So, and I really don't like the draw from the rail where she only has to send, although good enough that's exactly what she loves to do. If she can clear, she's got a chance for me. But I think with the horses on the outside, definitely have something to say about that. I'm going 10-9-5. Charlie's going 5-9-10, and Noah's going 5-10-1. 1. Guys, switching over to the last race of this sequence. It is the same exact conditions, claiming 35,000s, non-winners of 2 lifetime, but now going a mile and a 16th on the inner turf course. I'm switching over to the Equibase right now. It draws a field of 9 with 1 MTO on the outside. Yogi, the morning line favorite, I would assume, would either be the number 8 Sweetest Princess or the number 9 Miscreant. The number 7 Red Hot Chick's definitely one that could be in that conversation as well, although the figures look a little bit light on her, although I'm going with the number 7 in this race, although the 2 other guys on this panel are going with the number 8 Sweetest Princess for Castellano and George Weaver. Charlie, I believe, did I let you go first last time, or did Noah go first last time? I can never keep track anymore. Too many people.
I think it was me.
All right. Well, Noah, then you are up, my friend. What did you like most about the number 8 Sweetest Princess?
Yeah, with Sweetest Princess, when I'm handicapping a race, a lot of times I like to look at intention. But George Weaver started this filly out on the grass. It wasn't very successful, switched to the dirt, and then broke the maiden. But when she got back to the grass, she ran back-to-back Beyer tops. In that last race, I probably would have expected an improvement last time with those back-to-back Beyer tops, but maybe that field was just a little too tough for her. The concern is she's 0 for 6 on the grass, but this is who I'm going to go with in a very wide open race, in my opinion.
This race is definitely wide open, and Charlie, I'll let you touch on anything Noah missed. Sweetest Princess, granted, she hasn't had a win. Her only win has actually come on the dirt, but her highest figures have come on the turf. Is it kind of just maybe about having this filly kind of find her feet per se, or maybe dropping her down will be the answer here?
I just think it was too tough of a race. I mean, trying to run in a $95,000 allowance race is a big ask for this horse. I mean, for me, the one positive I do see is maybe the angle was, again, as Noah had mentioned, running 2 career figures in a row. Maybe George Weaver, because he is one of the best in the business and has been on fire this year. Maybe his angle was just, look, the horse is seeming to take those steps forward now that I have her back on the turf. Let's try to take this step forward and see how she does. But you can see it was completely dead on the board at 17-1. Also says that the horse clipped behind, so maybe not the easiest trip as well. I do think this is a wide open field, but I also, again, I like the angle that this horse has probably been running in tougher competition than just about anyone and has put up solid figures since switching back to the turf if you put a line through the last effort. I don't think the distance will be a problem. I like that the horse, from a figures perspective, also looks strong with the 88 and 85 for pace of the horse's versatility. I think this horse can, kind of sit a nice stalking trip or even press the leaders and get by. I like Javier Castellano getting back on the horse. And again, I just think the major class relief should really help this horse out. And I think Sweetest Princess, rightfully so, should be the horse to beat.
I mean, that's definitely the obvious angle, right? So that was my thinking and why this horse would most likely be morning line favorite with the figures that she's run in allowance company and now coming all the way down to 35,000, which not necessarily a suspect drop in my opinion, just kind of George Weaver's kind of found this condition to be right for her and just trying to get her where she belongs to get a win. Noah, I'll kind of let you touch on that as well a little bit more, and then move on to your other 2 as they are completely different to who we have underneath. But just kind of a suspect drop to you, or is it kind of just where George Weaver thinks she'll be able to win?
I think this is just where she has the chance to win. With the fact that Saratoga, their purses are so big, I don't pay too much attention. I just think these horses don't really mind. They're just trying to put their best foot forward with their horses.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You get that type of stuff where these purses, I mean, this is a $35,000 claiming race, but the purse is still $50,000. So Noah's point's completely taken where a lot of these horses a lot of these trainers want to drop their horses where they can win, as it doesn't matter where they put them. The money is always good. I went with the number 7 Red Hot Chick on top for Maker and Pratt. I know her figures look really light, but Maker has had her in maiden special weight company, ran 2 pretty decent races in state bred company, now goes to maiden 40, wins with Carmouche up, and then Maker after that race tries her out at allowance N1X company, runs an okay race, completely dead on the board, and just never really gets a rally going. Now Maker drops her to where she's probably fit to win a race, and if she improves off of that last race into the low 70s, I think it's definitely enough to win a race like this. And Charlie has her in third, so I'm sure he kind of saw it the same way. So Charlie, I'll let you touch on Red Hot Chick, and you're on, and the number 5 in wow, Annihilate would be my guess. Annihilate maybe, but what'd you like most about Red Hot Chick?
Yeah, no, just the same thing you said. Again, the figures are respectable. I like, again, with the time form pace as well with the 70 and 79 shows, again, the horse has decent figures compared to the rest of this field and can be one that can, again, just kind of sit in the middle. Also, again, something we've kind of touched about with some of these weaker horses is the ability to pass. And Red Hot Chick is another one that at least has shown the ability to be able to pass, which, again, in these kind of races is an underrated ability because some really do kind of just get stuck in wherever they are. And again, I think kind of just a similar issue to Sweetest Princess, where they just, had a lot of confidence after a career best figure to move the horse all the way up to 80,000 allowance, and it was just too big of an ask. And as you mentioned, again, another one that was just dead on the board. Another angle where I think trying to put the horse in a much easier spot where the horse is a realistic win contender. Unfortunately, since multiple trainers kind of had that same thought process, some of them are going to be disappointed that it doesn't work out. But again, that's another reason why I think Red Hot Chick is live too. And another one that will probably be arguably favoritism. Is kind of put in a similar spot. And then, moving on to, I don't know, I thought it was Annihilate, but now with the way it's spelled, maybe it isn't. But yeah, my angle was, again, another one with very solid figures. I know the horse has dealt with some cold paces, which has kind of been to the horse's benefit, as this horse, she prefers to sit a little off the pace. But I honestly, the horse runs best when there is hot pace, and I don't know if the horse will get that. But the figures fit. The workouts have been very impressive with the minute 3 and a 48-4. So again, for this field, there is no clear-cut contender. It's a wide-open race. It's really just any horse you can see confidence in. And again, 3, 4 straight, honestly, you could argue very solid figures with the 68, 66, 75, and 62. I think this is certainly a horse that can win in this race. I don't think it'll be too much of an ask at all. And maybe even a little bit more of a value pick if you're looking for a better price.
Definitely could be. My only thing, I know I don't usually like to play with jockey gymnastics either, but Lascano takes off this horse for Ferraro, who hasn't won at the meet and only went 70% on his races in 2023. Picks up Ruben Silvera, who hasn't raced a race at Saratoga this year. So there's many ways to go, many question marks in that regard, but anywhere near that 75 and starter allowance company at Belmont would definitely be in the realm of possibility for this horse to win. But Noah, I'll let you touch on, because you actually have 2 horses that neither of us have, and then I'll get to mine, and then we'll move on to our best bets really quick. The number 3, Ghostly Girl for Kenny McPeak, after a really nice race at Ellis last time out, and then the number 1, Smoking Hot Kitty for Horacio De Paz and Manny Franco.
Yeah, this is Ghostly Girls. It's only your second start on the grass. But I tend to like horses doing anything for the second time. Granted that Ellis turf was a lot different than the Saratoga turf nowadays. With this field, I just feel like a lot of these horses don't do a lot for me. So I figured I'd just take a fresh face.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, the 3-hole routing on the inner turf is 7 for 33, which is the best out of any post on the inner turf. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then with the 1, Smoking Hot Kitty, horse that's got a pretty strong late kick. I think coming out of those 2 sprint races, she'll be a little more forwardly placed because I don't think there's a ton of speed in here. But then again, I don't know if that pace is really going to set up for her, but she can maybe clunk up for third.
That was my angle with this horse. Is she's got plenty of paces to run into and just hasn't really been able to get there, even at this level and below it. Although those were sprinting back in Aqueduct. She doesn't really back at Aqueduct last year. She ran a good race routing, but never really has had that kick to be able to get home while going long. So that was my angle with the 1. I went completely different ways than both of these guys did underneath. I went with the number 6, Lady Firefoot, in second for Patrick Reynolds and Kendrick Carmouche. That maiden 40 at Aqueduct last year really fit this horse and really fits this field. If she can come back off the layoff in any regard close to that 72 on the turf with that same type of trip, I think she really has a shot and seems to be working well for Patrick Reynolds, who's winning 2 for 7 on this meet at Saratoga. And then to the outside, I went with Sweetest Princess. The one horse I wanted to talk about was Miscreant for Philip Serpi and Jose Lascano. Lascano's been riding absolutely lights out. I believe while we were there, I think he won 6 or 7 races in 2 days, 2 or 3 days. So Lascano's got what it takes right now to win these races at Gulfstream. Definitely fit, especially these last 2, one on the synthetic, one on the turf. If Miscreant can continue to show this form on the synthetic and doesn't necessarily need a monster pace to close into, Miscreant's also a little bit interesting, although I think the pace doesn't necessarily set up for her. I'm going 7-6-8. Charlie's going 8-5-7, and Noah's going 8-3-1. And shout out to Rob M, who also likes Lady Firefoot, and that's why we will show them wrong, Rob, why we are exactly correct with Lady Firefoot. But guys, moving on to our best bets of the weekend as we close out the show here. I thought this was really funny. No one knows this because I talked to him before the show. Charlie has no idea about this, but there's one best bet that we basically all have. And they the way this works is they all send them to me. They have no idea of my picks or if Charlie doesn't know Noah's picks or my picks or anything like that before they send them to me. And we were pretty much exactly the same on one of the best bets of the two. So, Charlie, I'll let you get to it. Your best bets are race number 7, a double, singling the number 10, which is the Chad first-time starter in the 2-year-old race with More Than Looks and Carl Spackler, and a heavy pick 3, including those two with the 1, and then taking the double from that in race 8, going 1-2 with 1. Charlie, talk about your ticket construction and best bets.
Yeah, so I wanted to really put my focus on the races we were covering. As we all kind of mentioned, these last 2 races are certainly the races, in my opinion, you don't want to bet in your horizontals. They're more verticals because you're going to get a bunch of prices. So I figured, as you've kind of talked on a lot, it's very good to stand on the bets you feel strong about. As Howard mentioned earlier, if you're going to do any sort of horizontal bets and you believe in the one horse American Revolution, you kind of have to just single that horse. That was my angle in my pick 3 that I feel strong about. Again, I mentioned with the 10 Vetriano, I believe, looks very strong with the workouts, very expensive horse, good connections. Again, I believe is in a spot that was pointed to and should win going away. And then as much as I like More Than Looks, I still think Carl Spackler's a very talented horse. So I didn't want to risk not having Carl Spackler on any of my tickets. For me, it's a 2-horse race between those two, and then you're just looking for other prices. So that's kind of how I constructed my doubles, and then my pick 3 that I'm encouraging to bet heavy on, because I believe, if you're going 1-2-1, it's a pretty cheap ticket. So for me, I'd put like $10. I believe it's like a $2 ticket. So I'd do around $10 so based off of my typical budget for those kind of tickets.
Yeah, look, especially if you can get, even if favorites come home, if you press it up to 10 to $20, you'll get a pretty decent payout, hopefully in the realm of 4, 5, 6 to 1. So Charlie, good luck with your best bets on the weekend, and this should enclose what best bet we are all thinking for this Friday at Saratoga. Noah's best bets, race number 7, going 6-10 with 2, so going the Pletcher first-time starter with the Brown first-time starter, and then singling Carl Spackler, and then a straight exacta in race number 9, 1/5. Noah, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, race 7. It's pretty crazy that we all were pretty similar. Either we're going to be all right or we're going to be all wrong. So,
that's right.
There we go. But in race 7, using those 2 firsters for Pletcher and Brown, the 6 Trust Fund, and the 10 Vetriano. Although I put Trust Fund over Vetriano, I think it's probably either one of those 2. And then I did the double with Carl Spackler, who was my top pick last week and this week. And then going to race 9, that is the race with American Revolution, who's probably going to be a pretty heavy favorite. And then I think I'm going to try and do a straight exacta 1-5 with Bankit. I know Kyle's a big fan of that horse, so that gives me a little bit of confidence. And I'm thinking that, Dr. Ardito might take some money, maybe some stinking thinking, like I said. But then again, I'm just trying to find some value. So those are my 2 plays.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, as you said, I like Bankit a lot. So, and if American Revolution turns out to be the goods, just like he was last year, 1-5 is definitely a possibility. So Noah, good luck with your best bets. And again, I will go with the exact same double in race number 7 as one of my best bets, 6-10 over 2, and race number 9, a win on the number 5, Bankit. Guys, we've all talked about, all my best bets have been talked about already. People are stealing my thunder, but I think I go ahead and look at the board in the first time starter race. That gives you a big inclination on where obviously the money is going, but where the talk is, where the buzz is on these horses. I think the most likely winners are both the 6 and 10, and then singling Carl Spackler, who I am still really high on, even though More Than Looks will most likely be the favorite in that race. And then to beat American Revolution, most likely at even money or below, I'm going for a win on the number 5, Bank It, who can hopefully run a good race off of his last and get up to win over a long rested American Revolution. But guys, I want to give a quick shout out here. Richard Avalar says, heard your horse Shards came in second. Congratulations. I agree with Howard Richard, where a little disappointing. We really wanted to see him win, especially since his last race came up so live. He ended up going off at 4-5 in that race, and unfortunately just lost by, I believe, about 3/4 to a length. So he definitely is talented, has a bright future, but we were very hopeful on him to see him get a win out at Colonial. But guys, that is going to be it for us for episode number 34 of Bettin and Boozin. Thanks so much to everybody in the chat. We've had great viewership and great comments the entire night. For everyone out there, good luck on your bets on Friday. And for my co-host Charlie Freeman, Noah Maher, and of course Bettin and Boozin host Kyle Roscoe, good luck on Friday at Saratoga and crush those bets. Good night, everyone. Have a great night.